Fulci once said, people who blame The Beyond for its lack of story have not understood that it's a film of images which must be received without any reflection. They say it is difficult to interpret such a film, but it is easy to interpret a film with threads, such as John Carpenter's Escape from New York. The Beyond, or even Argento's Inferno, are absolute films. Funny he should say that, because H.P. Lovecraft, more than once, mentioned the importance of atmosphere, the cosmic point of view, the superiority of impressions and images over the mere mechanics of plot. And wasn't it Edgar Allan Poe who once said, all that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream?
BodyBags, where horror lies.
Hey guys, Rob from Georgia. And I have the privilege, as always, to be your BodyBags reviewer this Wednesday. And this is officially the new year, 2019. So we'll see how often we get or catch ourselves falling back on the whole 18 thing. Anyways, so yes, what better way to start off a new year than spend a few minutes talking about Lucio Fulci and perhaps his seminal classic, his masterpiece of terror, The Beyond. And so that's what we're gonna do. Right off the bat, it's 1981. The film is tucked into a trilogy that we refer to as the Gates of Hell trilogy, or I like Fulci's Lovecraft trilogy. But the film is 81, tucked in between those two, City of the Living Dead, House by the Cemetery, and perhaps it is the linchpin of the two, the door hinge that allows the other two to kind of turn on it. What can we say? It's Fulci. He's got a cameo on this thing, as well as Sicchetti, the writer, and the cinematographer Savolti, and De Rossi, of course, does the makeup, and these guys, of course, stick to him pretty close, at least for these few films. Catherine MacCall, of course, as Liza, and David Warbeck as Dr. John McCabe, and The Beyond. Really, as I said, in the intro thing, this film, like Fulci says, is a series of images, and it's funny. JP said it best when he said. In fact, I think the first time I heard JP use this term, nightmare logic, was back in the Phantasm franchise pod, and I'm almost positive he brings it up again in episode 62 of the Director Spotlight on Fulci in the 22 Shots of Moodz and Horror podcast. And but he's right. It's this nightmare logic. It's a film built upon images, and there's no need for reflection. It's just receive and don't dwell very long. But, and there is a huge but with singular quotes, as I like to do to emphasize things. There is a huge but that I'm going to get into here, because you can watch the Gates of Hell trilogy, or refer to it as Lovecraft, or Fulci's Lovecraft trilogy. Lovecraft plays a major role with Lucio Fulci, and I'm not going to say he built the entire trilogy as it would become known upon Lovecraft, but Lovecraft plays a real important role. And basically, before I go any further, in this one, we're talking about a hotel that's got a serious, serious past. We get to see that past unfold in a tinted sort of black and white, which is really cool looking. And then as we jump, that's at like in 1927, I think, Louisiana. We jump ahead to like 1981, I think, and the story moves forward with Catherine MacCall and David Warbeck. And Catherine MacCall's character, Liza, she inherits a hotel that is built upon an entranceway to hell, gateway of sorts. And there's no real suggestion as to what unleashes this thing. Perhaps it's just the moment she steps into it and the dust begins to be unsettled and things are put into motion. But do we really need a reason? I mean, really, with a film like this? If you really need to ground yourself more with this film, then you need to get into some Lovecraft. And Pickman's model is a perfect story, because I think more than any other story, Fulci gained inspiration, and at the centerpiece of both stories, well, both the Beyond and Lovecraft story, is a painting. And Pickman is an artist, as we get to know, and he lives in a place where he gets to glimpse or sees the reality, the true nature of the demonic, and he paints it, and the reflection is too much for those around him, and he ultimately gets kicked out of the art society or whatever in Boston that he's part of. And so his buddy is just basically one day walking along with his other buddy, and and so he serves as the narrator. So he tells the story of Pickman, and I'm not going to give much away up, but you ought to read it. But Pickman's picture that he paints, that the narrator not only gets to glimpse that painting, but he glimpses a Polaroid that Pickman took to allow him to paint what he paints. And so Pickman sort of sits at the entranceway, or an entranceway of hell, so to speak, and the demonic sort of visit him, and he takes his pictures, and then he goes to painting. And at the core of the Beyond is Schweck, who we see at the very beginning, if I'm saying it right, a warlock witch who has glimpsed, in a very Lovecraftian way, has glimpsed to the other side. He's seen something, and he's captured it in an incredible way, in a painting that has, it's more than a painting, it's life itself, or in that it's all consuming, and you literally can fall into it. And so when the dust is sort of unsettled in the hotel, the painting more and more and more becomes the centerpiece, as well as the Book of Eben, which is mentioned in not the Dunwich Horror. There's another Lovecraft story that is mentioned, and anyways, but Lovecraft, and how Lovecraft writes, Fulci really, he's the first guy that I have seen that has taken the essence of Lovecraft and been able to put it on screen in a way that only Lovecraft or only Fulci can. And so for me personally, God, things like this, this movie and City and House that follows after, for me to see someone who's actually taken Lovecraft without necessarily making a story of his, but done Lovecraft and done Lovecraft right, is insane. And this movie, man, it's cat. Lately on the pod we've heard a lot of references to Texas too, and the great jump scare in there. But this one has at least one or two, one down in the basement cellar that I'm specifically thinking of. That is just, it still jolts me a little bit when it comes, and I let it because I want to, because I love this scene. But anyways, this film sort of carries on, and I don't want to give much more away than Liza's, her trying to open up this hotel opens the gateway to hell, and in a very Lovecraftian way. it's not enough just to consume the hotel, but ultimately it will consume anything and everything around it. Haven't we seen this also in City? And maybe there's hints of it in House, but there's a lot of Lovecraft, a lot of Lovecraft was heavy on images and creating an impression. And of course, we know Fulci. Where does he get it from? I mean, he's got to get at least a good nab of it from Lovecraft. I mean, the close-ups, I'm gonna make you sit here and watch this whether you want to or not. It is, it's awesome. But 1981, The Beyonds. There's a lot on there. This is the Grindhouse. And I have to say, I don't know, if you guys can even remember or not, but there was a day, not very long ago, when we didn't have this. And it was hard to get a copy of this unless you had a copy from eons ago. And when the news first broke over the pod that Grindhouse was releasing this, this was awesome for me, because I was just then starting to learn about purchasing over in the UK, and the likes of Arrow and 88 Films and Scream Factory and of course Grindhouse, and so this was the first time this film made it into my collection, was the Grindhouse release. And boy, I'm telling you what, I could not have gotten a better release. Of course, Fabio Frizzi's score, of course, comes with it. And, they just do that. Heavy cardboard. I mean, just, I don't want to get too much into the release of this, but it just looks great. I mean, it's good stuff. But, so, I think I'm just going to wrap it up here, and I think I've said enough. And really the intent here was not to completely tear this thing apart, but to give you a real reason or give you ways of grounding yourself into this film, maybe in ways you've never done before. And of course, we always have the episode 62 of the Fulci Director Spotlight for the Gates of Hell trilogy. And of course, there is the horror movie podcast, HMP 149. They did a great podcast to the Gates of Hell trilogy. That is awesome. I'll put those things down below. And then, of course, Stephen Thrower's book, Beyond Terror, the films of Lucio Fulci. I mean, there's a lot of places to go. If you don't own any Lovecraft, I mean, YouTube. His stories are all over the place. In fact, Pickman's model's on there. I just looked at it the other day. So if you don't have that. Not to completely be able to tear apart Fulci, but maybe to understand him more in a way that makes the films much more satisfying. And can't hurt to get into some Lovecraft. So some shout outs there. And of course, in the end here, throw out a couple shout outs to my Bills, who finished off their year in spectacular fashion. Win over Miami is always great. And of course, my Dogs have a big game tonight against Texas. So I'm gearing up for the Sugar Bowl tonight. But want to just wish everyone a happy new year, and all that lies in front of us, the great beyond, so to speak, the many weeks and months that lie ahead. Just hoping everything is just awesome for everybody. And so I'll just sign out there. Again, this was Lucio Fulci's, my attempt to have some fun with his 1981 film, The Beyond. And it is, of course, a Grindhouse release, and this movie is... But that isn't most of everything Fulci does. Wow. So, go Bills.